Stay strong. Stay with me. We ain't done yet.
Red Dead Redemption 2 has some of the most iconic characters in gaming history, whether it's John Marston or Arthur Morgan or the living rat himself, Micah Bell. The franchise has mastered the art of writing complex and relatable characters, and these characters can resonate with players from all walks of life. But today, I want to focus on one character who stands out, the leader of the Van Der Linde gang, Dutch Van Der Linde. I just want to share my love for this character and why I think he's one of Rockstar's most complex characters. For those of you that don't know who Dutch Van Der Linde is, let me just give you some backstory. Dutch was born in the mid-1850s to a woman of English descent named Greta and a father of Dutch descent somewhere near Philadelphia. His father fought for the Union in the American Civil War and died in battle that occurred in Pennsylvania. Because of his father's death, Dutch developed a grudge against Southerners. Dutch was a disobedient child and rarely got along with his mother. Eventually, he decided to run away at the age of 15. His mother would later on die in 1881 and would be buried in Blackwater, although Dutch only found out several years later from an uncle of his. Because Dutch lacked parental figures, he educated himself entirely on his own, shaping his philosophy he would come to adopt. Dutch valued freedom and liberties above everything else, and dreamed of living an independent existence. To achieve these desires, Dutch began to resort to a life of crime. One day, Dutch met a con artist named Hosea Matthews at a campfire on the road of Chicago. Hosea attempted to con and rob Dutch, only realizing that Dutch likewise had done the same to him. Impressed by each other's skills, they decided to partner up and face the future together, forming the Van Der Linde gang. Later on that year, Dutch and Hosea would encounter a 14-year-old street orphan named Arthur Morgan. The pair decided to take the boy under their wing, teaching him how to read, write, hunt, fight, shoot and ride a horse. Arthur would become Dutch's protege. Around this time, Dutch would become romantically involved with a woman named Annabelle. After a couple of years, Dutch had grown his gang to new members. These would include Susan Grimshaw, Leopold Strauss, and John Marston. Sometime later, Dutch would meet Colm O'Driscoll, who was the leader of the O'Driscoll boys. The two maintained a loose and uneasy partnership, as Dutch disliked how Colm treated his own men as disposable. Colm likewise mocked Dutch for his philosophy in making a better world. Although the exact reason is unknown, Dutch broke the truce and killed Colm's brother. In retaliation, Colm murdered Annabelle, leaving Dutch heartbroken and vengeful. This event caused Dutch and Colm to become arch enemies and sparked years-long blood feud between the two rival gangs. Over the years, Dutch would attract many new members of the gang who would respect him as a protector and father figure. These gang members would include Tilly Jackson, Simon Pearson, and Orville Swanson. Eventually, Dutch would meet a new love, Molly O'Shea, a young Irish woman who was infatuated with Dutch and became his love from now on. As the years would go on, Dutch would grow his gang even more, having new members such as Bill Williamson, Javier Escuela, and Sean Maguire. At the time, Dutch was an altruistic and idealistic rogue, believing the gang could make a difference in the world. He had fashioned himself into something of a Robin Hood-like figure, taking money from the rich and wealthy who had plenty of it and giving it to the poor. He saw himself as a symbol for the Wild West in its romanticized form, and a humanitarian champion of the people, opposing government control and corporate exploitation while supporting individual liberty. His romantic image and charisma inspired the gang to believe in an anarchist vision of a savage utopia, and it was in the name of Dutch and his cause that they committed many violent crimes such as murder and robbery. But unfortunately, by 1899, Dutch was reluctantly starting to realize that the way of life he held so dear was quickly becoming an increasingly unrealistic proposition, and that the days of the Wild West were coming to an end, no matter how hard he tried to prevent it. Around December of 1898, Dutch looked to sell a cache of stolen gold. Aggravating the locals in the process, the deal went south, nearly resulted him getting killed. Fortunately for Dutch, he was saved by the rat, Micah Bell, who was accepted into the gang. The gang continued moving east until they reached the town of Blackwater, West Elizabeth in 1899. where they decided to stay for a time. In April of that year, Dutch and Micah planned to rob a riverboat carrying money from the bank. While Arthur and Jose had their own lead, Dutch instead opted to pursue the ferry robbery, which promised a big reward but was also riskier. Although they managed to make off with an immense take of $150,000, the heist ended up in a disaster. Agents of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency arrived unexpectedly quickly and ambushed the gang. During the chaos, Dutch shot a defenseless young woman named Heidi McCourt in the head. With the law close behind, the gang was forced to flee into the mountains during a heavy blizzard to escape. Before evacuating, Dutch hid the robbery earnings somewhere near the town. The events of the Blackwater massacre shook Jose's faith in Dutch, though he later admits that the faith in their mission had been dead for a long time before this. This leads us to the events that take place in-game. Now, the reason why I gave you the backstory on Dutch is because it's important to understand how his character changes as the game goes on and how his motives become different. I love Dutch so much as a character. I think he's one of Rockstar's most complex characters that they have ever made. When first introduced, Dutch immediately stands out as a strong, determined leader who will stop at nothing to protect and provide for his gang. Yet, he's not defined by his stoicism. His charisma and ability to show empathy at the right moments add layers to his personality. All these things about Dutch's personality are what drew me to the character in the first place. As I was playing the game, I started to learn about what Dutch's goals were and what he wanted and what he valued as a person. You see, Dutch's disdain for modernization drives his vision of a savage utopia. He wants a life for the gang that they can live free and do whatever they want without the law getting involved. This theme is central to his character as he fights against the law and industrialization, and day by day it gets harder because the truth is, like the beginning of the game said, this is the end of the Wild West. And like Arthur said, they don't want people like Dutch anymore. And as the game goes on, Dutch comes to the realization that he's trying to fight a losing battle, but he can't just give up. I know it's a meme to say Dutch has a plan and he wants to go to Tahiti or Australia, but in reality, what other choice did Dutch have? They were getting surrounded by Pinkertons everywhere they went. And I think this pressure of him being the leader and having to figure out what the gang was going to do to survive in a world that didn't want them put a strain on Dutch's morality and his relationships with the other gang members. It also doesn't help that Micah, the rat, was also in Dutch's ear, being a yes man to Dutch, because in reality, Micah didn't care about the gang or Dutch's dream, he only cared for himself. Seriously, you don't understand how much I hate Micah. You know what I'm saying? Master Splinter, that's what I call him. Dutch questions the gang's loyalty, especially Arthur Morgan and John Marston. Keep in mind, these are two people he has basically raised since they were children, but he's become so paranoid to the point where he's questioning their loyalty. Now, there is a theory about Dutch having bipolar disorder, shout out to Pinky. Still, in my opinion, that robs the character of a complex journey and moral code. This isn't me saying that there's no evidence for it, but I like to think Dutch being in a world that doesn't want him or his ideas or philosophy is a way better story for the character. I think an example of Dutch acting erratic is during the Angelo Bronte mission. For context, Dutch was seeking revenge because of a wounded pride. Bronte had manipulated Dutch and his gang, leading them into a trap. Dutch, being unable to tolerate the disrespect, drains Bronte and feeds his body to an alligator. This act is a turning point for the gang, especially John and Arthur. Keep in mind, Hosea, John and Arthur thought it was a bad idea, because the gang already had Pinkertons on their backs, so killing a rich and powerful figure like Bronte would not have helped the situation that they're in. But the gang goes along with it because they don't want to appear that they're being ungrateful and unloyal to Dutch. Benjamin Byron Davis delivers an outstanding performance as Dutch. Seriously, him voicing Dutch is top tier, it's one of the best. He manages to capture the raw intensity and emotional turmoil of a man tethering on the brink. His voice acting brings the character to life. This is another thing that adds to Dutch being an unforgettable character. Now, another moment that I think adds to Dutch's decline is Hosea's death. Hosea was not only Dutch's closest friend, but he was also his voice of reason within the Van Der Linde gang. His calm and strategic mindset often balanced Dutch's impulsive tendencies. When Hosea was killed during the St. Denis heist, Dutch had lost his angel on his shoulder, leading to Micah gaining more influence in the gang. Because come on, you're not going to tell me if Hosea was still alive, he would allow Micah to get in Dutch's ear like he did. And again, this leads to Dutch questioning the loyalty in his gang. When the gang are stranded on Guam, Dutch tells Arthur how he's been suspicious of John ever since the St. Denis heist. This is because Master Splinter is manipulating Dutch. This further fuels Dutch's distrust of John, planting seeds of doubt and portraying John as a traitor, even though John was generally loyal to the gang. Whenever he and Arthur question Dutch's plan, he sees this as disloyalty from the both of them. This increase of paranoia leads to Dutch just straight up abandoning John and Arthur and even the gang. A moment that sums this up for me is when the gang have a big sum of money from robbing a train. As they're getting ready to leave, Tilly tells them that the Pinkertons have John's wife, Abigail. Instead of rescuing her, Dutch is manipulated by Micah, and this is where Rockstar cooks. You can tell by the animation on Dutch's face that he's trying to justify his actions, but he knows what he's doing is wrong. Because Dutch doesn't want to be seen as a weak leader or wrong, he pushes the people that actually care about him away. That's why he doesn't help out Arthur when him and Micah are fighting. He can't bring himself to admit that he was wrong. After Arthur's death, we're introduced to the epilogue. It approximately takes 7 to 8 years after his death. Ever since then, Dutch has been MIA. Characters haven't seen him, they don't know what he's up to. In my opinion, I think this is the time where Dutch was reflecting on himself, trying to come to terms of what he did and how he was wrong. Because when him and Micah team up, John says, "What are you doing here?" and he says the same as you. He's there to kill Micah. And this is the last we see of Dutch in Red Dead Redemption 2. The next time we see Dutch in Red Dead Redemption 1, he's a completely different man to the man we met in Red Dead Redemption 2. He has become bitter and a disillusioned man, fully consumed by his paranoia and distrust. His idealism has now been twisted into nihilism, and he no longer fights for a cause, but rather for survival and chaos. His actions are more ruthless and self-serving, and he lacks the charm and leadership qualities that once defined him. This contrast is why I love the character, and I think Dutch's final scene where he's on the cliff and he's having his final conversation with John kind of sums up his character.
We can't always fight nature, John. We can't fight change. Can't fight gravity. We can't fight nothing. My whole life, all I ever did was fight.
Then give up, Dutch.
But I can't give up, neither. I can't fight my own nature. That's a paradox, John. You see, when I'm gone, they'll just find another monster. They have to. Because they have to justify their wages.
I love this speech so much because it encapsulates Dutch's realization that his fight against societal norms and authority was ultimately futile. He acknowledges the cyclical nature of power and oppression, suggesting that even when he's gone, the system will create new monsters to maintain control. I also love that his words also revealed internal conflict. He's fought against the world his entire life, but he couldn't escape his own flaws and nature. I think that this moment is such a fitting note for Dutch because it shows his tragic downfall, no pun intended. So yeah, that's what I think about Dutch and his character. There are way more aspects to go into about Red Dead Redemption, but that'll have to be for another time. Please, if you liked the video, subscribe, like and share. I plan to talk more about video games, so thanks for watching and I hope you have a good day.